So yesterday, a friend of mine asked me to explain what I believe is going on in terms of the current state of reality. Now, the first thing we have to understand is that, as I heard this from Rabbi Simi Jacobson, he's a great genius. He's author of Two What a Meaningful Life, Photographic Memory. He had the privilege of transcribing many of the Rebbe's talks. So it's a bit of a deep concept, so stay with me for a second. The great scientific and mystical question is, how do you get to this? Remember, before this, which is a bunch of atoms and time and space, existed, it didn't exist. So how do you go from this stage to that stage? Now think about that. Going from not here to here. That's a tremendous stage. Because everything that we have in this world, like a physicist, I heard this on NPR, he was saying how he imagines Harry Potter. Most things are possible, except for one thing. You can't make something out of nothing. So let's say I take this, I can, use the atoms here, maybe even to make a cockroach if I could somehow put life into it. But I can't create atoms. Atoms are energy. Energy's popping in and out of existence. How do you get from non-energy to energy? And of course, that's the Higgs boson, what they call the God particle, the part that literally is happening every nanosecond, is making matter come into existence. And so obviously there is a creator whose force is infinite, his ability is infinite, because you and I, and nothing in the universe has the ability to make something out of nothing. Even though we may have, making a computer is highly intelligent. One of the greatest Jewish geniuses in the world, von Neumann, who invented algorithms, game theory, was one who invented the computer. It's an amazing concept that you could write language to a computer. But still, he didn't invent it out of nothing. He had a head, his own mind, maybe was connected to some kind of divinely inspired. And bottom line is, he was able to have a concept. And for the concept, he used the existing machinery to work. And every single thing that we have in technology is all dependent on the physical stuff. Without physical stuff, you have nothing. And this may seem a little counterintuitive, but it's exactly what Einstein discovered, which is that all of reality, Einstein said it best, he said, reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. So in other words, everything you see, when you see this, is this real or not? Now, on one level, according to mysticism, in fact, mysticism says the world is more real than science does, because mysticism says it comes from God and God is real. But purely from an experience level, because that's really what the theory of relativity was, like he says, an hour sitting on a park bench with a nice conversation feels like a minute, and a minute sitting on a hot stove feels like an hour. So the experience of reality, right? Because whenever you're looking at reality at particles, they shape into position. They're in wave format, Heisenberg, then they go into particle format. So the experience of reality is nothing more than what's called in Hebrew an olam, a universe. And a universe is a time, space, and soul, or objects with soul dimension. And so everything you're ever going to experience is within the time, space. And if you're seeing it, obviously it's somehow an object within that time, space dimension. But obviously that's just the kind of visceral part of reality, the part of it that you can touch. But what about the part that you can't touch? What about the part that you can only think about? Emotions, love, ideas. And they don't exist within the time-space dimension. So Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism speak about a kind of the divine mind, or if you want to call it like the, hard drive of the universe. Now obviously there is this hard drive, because without that hard drive, all the math, as Einstein said, nature laughs at our mathematical equations, because everything is math. How DNA functions, how atoms function, all mathematical formulas. So math doesn't happen on its own, right? No computer equates on its own. Math has to be programmed. So without going into all the details, it's a separate subject, but the point is there's this divine, infinite, let's call it computer or super mind. And so if I get a new idea, and think about it, for thousands of years, we basically had pretty pretty much the same ideas. If I get suddenly, as Kabbalah predicting, like the year 1840, God will open the floodgates of wisdom of above and below, and they will converge in anticipation of the Messianic era. Suddenly there's this explosion of ideas, and the amount of ideas, as one of the founders of Google said, I don't remember the exact amount, but up to a certain time, like, I don't know, 1950, there was like 2 terabyte of data. And then, like, the amount of data eventually says, like, every 2 minutes we'll be uploading that amount of data. So the amount of ideas, and very, very profound ideas, whether it's the discovery of DNA, whether it's the discovery of atoms, whether it's a discovery of all these major, major, major discoveries, are all coming in a very short span of time, and they're all building on each other. So it's a very, very unique time that we're in. And so what that really means is that there's a window to the God mind. Now, obviously the God mind is infinite. So imagine I let you take a peek at, I don't know, the Louvre. I don't know if you've ever been to the Louvre. It's an old French palace, and it has lots and lots of sorry, somebody came in, so I had to take a break. So the point is that wisdom, at least new wisdom, descends into us. And now that's very, very important. The reason that's important is because now it's not that hard to understand. We can really appreciate that there will always be new discoveries. Whatever we know now, technology, Moore's law says that computational skills, and you have to understand what this means. Computational skills get 50% cheaper, I think it's 50% faster, or they double. Maybe that's 100% faster every 6 months. Now, it's just unfathomable to think about how fast it is. You're getting into nanotechnology, faster, faster, faster. These computational skills are going to hit levels, as I heard from someone, we already have computers, we don't even know what to do. Their computational skills are so good. So it just goes to show that innovation can go on forever. And the reason that's important is that means that we are perceivers. There's an individual, a bit of an eccentric guy, scholar, and he once told me, you know what the mind is? And I said, no, tell me. He said, the mind is the perception of the perception. So I'm a perceiver, and I'm perceiving you. You're a perceiver, you're perceiving me. But that's just in the mind. It's the perception of a perception. And so therefore, there's the time before the perception and the time after the perception. And so now you have to just look at yourself almost like as if you're an iPhone with infinite data, right? So let's say you have a hardware that can go on forever. So now all that matters is whatever will be developed, because you can always download another app, always, always, always get the next version. Today I have Android and I upgraded the system. So the whole system, all the buttons, everything changes. And actually it looks a lot better. It's a lot more functional. So we are a part of God. The soul is obviously a part of God. But we don't really realize that. We're in a body, so we have a consciousness. And then the consciousness begins to perceive and understand, and even better, integrate and change and grow. So this process can, is, and will happen infinitely. The reason this is important to understand is that it means 2 things have to happen for this process. The first thing is darkness, and the second thing is light. What is darkness? Darkness is exactly how computers work, zeros and one, or another way of saying it is nature and the supernatural. The concept of darkness is the concept of limitation. You're in a limited environment. And in a limited environment, you begin to perceive reality and you begin to think you know what's going on. Remember, the mind is the perception of the perception. So you perceive that your perception is reality. And in fact, just a very simple way that you really get how fundamental this is every culture has to deal with modern technology, right? So you have most cultures were obviously ancient cultures. So how does Islam deal with modern technology? Obviously, there are many different types. There's a lot of radicalization. There are movements, Boko Haram, that's, God forbid, they're killing girls that are going to school. You have Saudi Arabia, which basically bans Western teaching, and they just drum in the kids, memorize the Quran. They're all dealing with the fact that there's another reality. How do you react to the reality? So, some people say, okay, well, forget the old reality. I like the new reality. And then some people, in fact, there's a book by an economist, very bright guy, called Why Civilizations Die, or How Civilizations Die. And basically based on more, not so much economic predictors, but based on demographic predictors, there are only 3 groups in the world that manage to merge the ancient and the new. They manage to maintain their ancient value system together with technology. And those are the evangelical Christians, those are the Orthodox Jews, and the Israeli Jews. And the way you see that is in having enough children to replace. So, for example, Iran is actually going to become extinct as most, if not all, other cultures. And the reason they're going to become extinct is because as they hit modern technology, if you don't have the ability to marry your value system, the value of family, the value of integrity, the value of sacrifice, the value of love, together with the kind of narcissism and instant gratification of technology, what you end up happening is, so everybody's just, it's about me now. So if it's about me, it's all about comfort. And if it's about comfort, I don't sacrifice for having children. I don't sacrifice for one another. And therefore, literally, people are not having enough children. There are many countries in Europe, as we speak today, will be extinct. I don't remember how long, maybe a few generations, because they don't have enough children to replace. Because eventually people die. You don't have enough children. The society, the civilization dies out. And so this ability to merge ancient truths such as goodness and family and love together with using technology. So you don't say, oh, technology is something which is ungodly. There's nothing wrong. I mean, right now I'm doing a godly act. I'm teaching technology. The internet is a very important principle. And the principle is that everything can be used for one of 3 things. It can either be used for love. Take a knife. How do you use the mother is cutting a chicken for her child. The knife is an act of love. Be used for selfish purposes. I'm cutting chicken for myself. So it's not a bad thing, but it's still selfish, self-interest. Or, God forbid, it could be used for a negative thing. So there's nothing in this world, even religion, that can't be used for either positive. It could be used for selfish. I don't know, maybe I'm going to use it to become famous or a job or something. Or it could be used for positive, right? I'm not sure if I started with negative or positive, but the point is everything can be used for positive, negative, or self. And so technology, as Einstein said, the mind cannot lead. Einstein was very clear about this, that the technology is like an axe. He said that, technology in the hands of a psychopath is giving an axe murderer an axe. So if you give Iran a nuclear bomb, well, Iran believes that when the world will be soaked in blood up to a horse's knee, this is their prophecy, God forbid, then the 12th Mahdi, he's in some well, he's like the Messiah, is going to come out of the well. And, so that's their goal, because they are Shiite Muslims, and the Shiite Muslims believe that you have to manifest the Messiah. So similar to the Jews, I'm not so sure about the Christians, but I believe the Christians as well, that we're waiting for the Messiah. It's going to come when God ordains it, and perhaps there are various things that we can do in Judaism, goodness and kindness, hastens the Messiah. But ultimately, it's coming from God. From the Iranian perspective, it's not coming from God. There's an act they have to do. So technology is just a useful tool in that act. What's the difference between an axe or a bow and arrow or a spear in the olden days and a rocket today? There's no difference. One may have better technology. One may be more lethal. But it's just, as Einstein said, something to the effect that if I had realized that it's not the bomb that explodes, but it's the heart that creates that explosion. I would have never, better than, he said, better I should have been a watchmaker. He was such a great scientist. Better I should have been a watchmaker because he revealed how to do nuclear technology. So all of this is to explain how there's a dual reality. On one hand, there's the limited reality. And limited reality is always, always, always outside of yourself. Because anything that you can see, anything that your senses see, anything that you can quantify, is already in the limited paradigm. Because if it was infinite, you can't see infinity. It's impossible to see infinity. You can't even imagine infinite numbers. You can't do that. The mind, as both the Baal Shem Tov and Einstein say, we think in a time-space dimension, in a six, like we think in a cube. So if I say imagine an image, so it's you have a time-space continuum that you can think of, but you cannot picture something because it's a time-space object, which is infinite, because infinity is not a time-space object. It's basically like an equation. And so the Kabbalah says God is not someone you can see, and this is why Judaism is very into a non-corporeal God, and even God says in the Bible, you did not see an image, whatever they saw when God descended at Mount Sinai. You did not see an image, it says. Why? Because God cannot be in an image. If he isn't an image, he's limited. If he's limited, he's not infinite. Now, the limited cannot create the infinite, but the infinite can create the limited, because the infinite is not limited by any limitation. So there are two universes going on. In fact, what's quite amazing, and I heard this from a physicist, is that actually we live in two universes at this very moment. There's the quantum infinite universe where things do not make sense. Logically, it's impossible for things to be in two places at the same time, and yet things are in two places at the same time. Not only that, it's logically impossible for this to be in two directions at the same time. Yet, I guess the electron, they're in multiple directions at the same time. And creating computers which are just, I think it's like a single quantum, a single like atom, because the atom is quantum, so it can have any equation. It could be here and not here, and both here and not here at the same time. So you can do infinite equations just with two things that are infinite. I'm not an expert on that, but that's the basic idea. So the idea is that you have the infinite universe that you don't see, because it's not something that the brain can't even think about it. It's beyond logic. The logic has no ability to understand it. And then you have the finite universe, which is what you think is reality. And ultimately, the reason this is a beautiful thing, Einstein said that when we discover the truth of God, and he said his whole quest of science was to understand the mind of God. So he said, when we discover the truth of God, it will be both simple and beautiful. And this is both simple and beautiful because what this does, it allows for, on one hand, free choice. You want to live in your little bubble, your little box, and there are billions of people, whether, I don't know, it's a Chinaman with whatever the Chinese culture is, or a Vietnamese, all these people, whatever their religion is, whatever their belief system is, they're all in these bubbles. And all these bubbles are finite bubbles. But then there are also people that are connecting to the infinite. They have a direct relationship to God. And that's what Kabbalah says. You cannot see God, but you can feel God. And you can sense God. And in a certain sense, it's like an art. Nobody can really quantify art. Say, what is art? Well, art's basically like an expression of an emotion. How do you quantify that? How do you quantify a feeling? And yet you could feel the feeling. What is love? Billions of songs are trying to say it, but they're just describing the emotion. I feel this. What exactly is that feeling? But yet you can feel it. And so the same thing is that this duality, which exists on the physical world, the quantum and the what I call Newtonian physics, which are atoms versus the quantum state, are existing simultaneously. And obviously the infinite state creates the Newtonian state, the mathematical state that we live in. But the question is, do you want to remain stuck in the mathematical state? Or do you want to allow the quantum state, you want to allow the infinite divine to pulsate forever? And that is the question. And that is the world that we're in. And therefore, there are two equations that come out of this. And the first is that no one can screw up the world, because it's the quantum state, the infinite state, that is creating the world. And therefore, even though things seem chaotic, it all comes from it all has a purpose in a general thing. Obviously, none of us know all of these, a lot of things that don't make any sense to us. But from the quantum state, it has to make sense because it's being created as we speak this very moment. And then the other thing is, there's a choice. And this is very, very critical because there was a physicist, he did a lecture with me, and he said that, I think it was in the 1920s, the physicists got together and they realized, I guess they began to realize about the quantum state. He said, well, maybe we need to change our life, because it means that reality is different. They went home and basically they didn't change their life because change takes two things. It takes desire and it takes courage. And so basically, our goal in life is to have the desire and the courage to live our highest quantum infinite, which ironically doesn't mean that we're outside of the finite, because if you're outside of the finite, you're still not infinite. Because an infinity that can't simultaneously be within the finite is not a true infinity. Infinity is all positions at the same time. So it's about living in two realities, allowing the infinite to upgrade. Like we gave the example, we're like an app, not an app, we're like the hardware that can continuously download new apps. And that's really what we're doing in life. We're going through experiences. And all you really need to do is you just need to be open. You need to listen. You need to look. You need to hear. You need to feel. And you have to ask yourself, in every encounter, what is the divine upgrade that I can learn from this in terms of making me a better, kinder person?